trying to think a little bit more on content modeling at the sort of more the organizational level. This is a slide we put together a while back, and I think it's a good overview of just where in an enterprise, we're thinking that content lives and how it moves through the system. So when we bring everything together, like content operations, semantics, the authoring process, when we're thinking through content models, we're trying to encompass all of these pieces. So the authoring experience, whether that's authors who will only work in Word and we need to think of a way of transforming that information through to the web or into some other kind of help system, or the authoring experience actually within like something like a CCMS. The user experience for our actual authors is something that we like to think about. And the flexibility within models, how that information gets transformed, as it goes through management systems, how we work with metadata, the semantic annotation there, and then just how's the content being stored? How are we bringing in our digital assets? When we get into things like AEM, there's so many moving parts. Design gets to lead a lot of these items. That sometimes messes up this whole, if we think about this as a flow, it's often going to be going from here back to here and round a few times before it then gets out into the world. And things like Contentful gives us different kinds of content stores. We've got the more traditional CMSs that are going to store things in different names. We've got headless. So that's all what sort of the content store here is going to show us. We have the concept here of core content model. That could be within a department, within a team. So being able to define a single model, the more that we can define all the pieces of content that can then be used in different components on the front end, the easier it is to move content through the system. So when we're developing a core content model, it can come from our existing website content model, schemas. It can come from influences within the organization, like legal saying we need to add some things, or I think recently with one of our clients, we had a whole bunch of forms that are structured in a similar way, but they are all logoed differently and have to be added throughout like multiple websites in different ways. So that's something we could look at as a source of truth. That's coming from a compliance department. And those are kind of things that we may not have that knowledge of when we start a model. So having something that's adaptable is important. And being able to connect it with the visual presentation. And we're seeing a lot of things like Figma with its development modes, its ability to pull in real content, things like that, and making this kind of an interesting space. So when we think about content that we actually model, well, we're probably all pretty familiar with these, but there's all kinds of stuff, like is it troubleshooting information, instructional materials. It's when we get out into the more design related things that I think we often run into more issues. So one of our clients that we're working through right now, we're taking that design base, but we're making up these very component based items, which then they can say, we're creating content that's going to be shown in this way, where we have a picture and we have a CTA and it can tie itself into it, but it's still structuring it. It's just allowing them to write the content to go into the correct places. And then content discovery analysis, I think, especially within some of our larger organizations, this is something that's going to be constantly going on, and it is going to be constantly changed. And sometimes you're always going to be looking back and going, how can we change what we have to fit this new style without having to rewrite everything? So understanding what it is we have to work with, what is our consistent design, both front end, back end, author experience, all of those kind of things. So just a little deeper into some of the things we might look for in content, like what are our patterns? What's the purpose of the content? Maybe the sequence. So back to how do people go through this information? Are we seeing errors and inconsistencies? Like help systems, we often see a lot of the same information in there, and maybe it's been written by various people over time, so it's got different looks and feels, or the tone of the article is completely different. And then just what might be missing. So when we are talking about content modeling, we're talking about our content types and then just the elements of those content types. So a press release, the title, the author, the attributes that go along with those, and the relationships. So just the basic one of that is when we think of a press release, it has an author. that author has information that can then be another content type. So there we have a relationship between, the bio of the person and the information that they display. And that allows us to use that relationship in multiple ways throughout the site.
Content and technology are constantly evolving. Procedures and strategy are ever advancing. Are you ready to lead your team into a more intelligent future? Bolster your content outcomes with A's Intelligent Content Leader Cohort, an 8-week remote learning course that will refine your approach to content. Slots for our next cohort are available now. Apply today. The program centers around 90-minute group learning sessions offered each week. Together we'll cover content management, semantic systems, content models, content operations, as well as change management. Plus, we'll add on some additional topics as requested by you and other participants of the cohort. Access to the cohort also includes direct one-on-one mentorship and strategy recommendations based on your objectives. Don't miss out on this opportunity to equip yourself with the knowledge and skills you need to stay ahead of the curve. For more details and to apply, click the link today.